Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petralis, and we are so excited for our month of May, our Women in Sports Month. We have some incredible coaches coming on this podcast from all ranges of high school sports. Incredible in their own right, incredible stories. We have state championship coaches. We have state coaches of the year. And even at the end of the month, we have a best-selling author. So I'm honored, I'm humbled, and we have such an incredible group of women coming on this show. And I'm just really excited for the month of May ahead of us. So I couldn't think of a better first guest to have come on here and kick this month off. And in my opinion, one of the best high school basketball coaches in the state. And I'll even go one further on this and say in the New England area. So I'm really humbled to get this guest on here. I mean, I was kind of nervous emailing her, truthfully. So to get her on here was really cool when she responded back. So I'm really excited. I'm just going to read a few accolades about this coach. Is the current head boys basketball coach at Norwood High School. Yes, boys basketball coach. Before that, from 2009 to 2019, she had a 10-year run at Braintree, which included 4 state championships, 2014, 2015, 2017, 2018, was the Boston Herald Massachusetts Coach of the Decade, which is, I've never heard of that in my entire life. So we're going to be asking about that today because it's just incredible. And most importantly, did it as an athlete as well. Went to Stonehill, went to Boston Latin, and in both athletic Hall of Fames. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well in the podcast. So I'm excited. I'm honored and I'm humbled for our guest today from Norwood High School, Kristen McDonnell.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we're honored to have you on here. I did a lot of homework and research on you, and impressed is an understatement. So, before we get started, I like to kind of share whenever I can give some street cred to our coaches of their playing days and being an athlete. I love to. So I dug up a few facts I'm going to read off about you here. As I mentioned earlier at the top, you're in the Hall of Fame in basketball at Stonehill and Boston Latin. At Stonehill, you were the Northeast 10 Rookie of the Year. And you were first team all conference your senior year, scoring 1,215 points. So always love to give coaches a little street cred where it's deserved and earned.
And we always appreciate that. Trust me.
So the first thing I really want to jump in to ask you is, obviously you love the game of basketball. You played it all the way through college. Talk about when you thought basketball was going to be in the cards for you beyond your playing days, when you realized, hey, coaching, is something I'm really interested in doing.
Yeah, I lucked out big time, throughout like high school. I mean, even youth, high school, college. I just had the best coaches and just the best people around me. And I think from a really young age, I loved to dissect the game and talk about it and watch film of my teams play. Like my dad used to bring a camcorder to the games, and it was probably like those huge ones that they had to put on their shoulder. And
oh yeah.
And what I liked about it is he wasn't doing it for me to watch it. He was doing it about myself. Like he wanted me to see how the team was playing. I was a point guard. So he wanted me to be able to see it from different angles of like how to dissect different things and really quarterback an offense. And so I think really early on, I kind of just loved it, like loved the X's and O's stuff. And then I think one of like definitely not at the time, fortunate things that happened was injuries. Like I ran into a couple ACLs in high school, so I missed 2 years. I ran into an ACL again in college, so I missed part of that. A couple more meniscus tears, so missed parts of other seasons. And I think when you have to sit on the sidelines and watch, there's something like you're either gonna sink or swim, right? It's either gonna make or break you, and you love it, and you're like, I got to get back to this, or you're done, And I felt like I had coaches around me that let me be almost an assistant coach on the bench as a player. And so I would watch film with them and I would break it down with them, and it kind of just one thing led to another, and I was lucky I chose a profession in education, so I have the time to be able to coach. And I think you have to kind of have the timing has to be right, and the perfect storm of everything was for me. So it worked out.
Yeah, and that's crazy to hear all the injuries that you sustain. I mean, multiple injuries to your ACL. I mean, you said 3 times. I mean, you definitely tore the same one more than once. And obviously that speaks volumes about you. I think you probably also learned in that process of just being an athlete and overcoming adversity and taking on challenges and overcoming them. I mean, I read some of your accolades. For all the injuries you had, you still scored over 1,000 points. You were still first team, and you're still in the Hall of Fame. So, not only were you pretty good as a player, but I'm sure overcoming those injuries and facing that adversity also really helped you grow as a player as well.
Yeah, I think it was big at the time.
Awesome.
It really you learn to love it. That's for sure.
Yeah. So this next segment I love to call number crunching, right? So I know that you had a few assistant coaching stints outside before you had landed your first head coaching job, but you got the job at Braintree. I think it was '09. Is that correct?
Correct.
All
Yep.
right, good. So I want to make sure I did this research right. So I'm starting off on the right year. So I'm just going to number crunch here, okay? And this is how it's going to go. I'm just going to read off your stats. You're just going to sit back, kick your legs up, and enjoy this. And because I want the world to know these statistics that you have. So we're going to talk about Braintree first. You were the girls basketball coach there for 10 years. Your record was 211-32, which included 7 D1 South sectional titles, 4 state championships, as I mentioned, in 14, 15, 17, and 18. You made the playoffs every single year as head coach. Your records included your first year 10-10, 18-4, 22-3, 21-3, 22-3, 25-0, state champs undefeated, 21-1, state champs, 21-5, 26-5, 25-4. Holy moly, right? So when you just hear those numbers for a second, what was like the thing that was going through your head listening to these statistics and what you've really done in a 10-year window when you were at Braintree?
Yeah, I think just that I've been like really lucky. No matter what coach does anything out there, it's really like how you time the kids in the program. It's getting kids that not only buy in right away, but kind of take it and run with it. And I was really lucky. Even my first year when we were 10-10 in Braintree, and I just threw my name into the hat and was hoping for the best. Like the captains were incredible. They jumped on board right away. We had really good meetings to start. Like that's an important part. And then from there, it's like, you find that niche. Like, what's that thing that we can do a little bit different that other teams may not do, and kind of how can we get our kids to love doing that thing? And for that, it was defense for us. So that was kind of our selling point. And from there, it was just like the culture and the love being there and enjoy coming to practice. And so once you have that for a couple of years, like it sells itself. Like then you have kids that are just dying to be a part of your program coming up. And I was really, really lucky. I timed things incredibly well. I mean, my third year, fourth year, I watched like these 6-foot point guards walk in my gym, from future players at Villanova and UPenn and Liberty and Colgate, so you have to have the players, the horses to go with you. So I was very lucky.
Yeah, and definitely want to tip the cap to you because, at the end of the day, there's many teams that have a lot of talent, a lot of talented players, but also having the right person who's pulling the strings and calling the shots is really important in that as well. I mean, for the young coaches out there, so 10 years in, I'm guessing you probably got the job maybe late 20s, early 30s, somewhere in that window.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about how you start a culture or change a culture or just kind of begin your journey into coaching, especially for these young coaches out there that listen and really want to get their program off the ground running.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is like when you first get into it, head coaching, I was an assistant for 3 years and you have no idea what you're taking
Right.
on. Like
Nothing.
you're like, oh yeah, I can do this. You
Yeah.
feel pretty awesome about yourself. And so you jump in and then you realize like, not only are you in charge of these potentially 12 to 14, young women, you're also like putting together a staff and you're developing the kids in the sub-varsity. And then you're really like trying to lead a youth program that can do everything. You're doing fundraising. So I think what's good is that you almost don't know what's coming. I think it's almost better that way. So you just kind of deal with it as it comes. And I think the most important thing you can do, and I just had to do it again last year, but is to get like the seniors or the captains. If you can get buy-in from those kids right away and not this like you're selling it to them, but in a genuine, you care about them, you want to see what we can do, like this is going to be awesome, we're going to have a lot of fun way, I think they jump on board that much quicker and then they sell it. You don't have to do a damn thing. You can kind of sit back and say like, hey, this is going to work. And then, I would say everybody talks about it, but like defense is that one thing, right? You can control. So especially going into a new program, if you don't have the best talent going in, why not focus on something you have a little bit more control of? And what we would try to do is sell it so much to our team that it would be regurgitated in the newspaper. So like all of a sudden our kids were being interviewed and they were talking about our defense and they were talking about this. And that's when I knew we kind of had them. I was like, all right, well, they're saying whatever we want, and now other teams are hearing like, we're all about defense. This is how we do it. And so that's just one thing kind of leads to another that way. And then I would say, you just keep learning. Like I remember going my first year, I tried to create an offense. Now, this is my first year as a head coach, and I literally tried to actually make up an offense.
Not
Like,
knowing everything else you're gonna have to be dealing with on top of it.
right. And like of course I can't create an offense because it would have existed already, right? If it was that good. So I was doing this like X's and O's thing, and huge flop. Like first couple weeks of the season had to drop it, and I think what I learned very quickly is like simple is the greatest thing in the world, especially at the high school level. And then
Yeah.
just do those simple things really, really well. And it makes it a lot easier for you, a lot easier for the kids.
Yeah, and what I love is because, when you think basketball, you just think three-pointers in such an offensive game. So to kind of start your program out being more defensive-minded and taking more of a presence on the defensive side of the ball, I find in any sport, when you're really good defensively, your offense develops nicely, because you're so good at defense that you have to just be okay at offense or a little bit above average, especially in the football world anyways. If you can stop teams and teams can't really score on you, then you don't have to be perfect on offense. You just have to be good enough.
Right.
And
Were you on the defensive side for football?
so I was a coordinator for about 8 years, and then eventually became a head coach. So I was pretty
Yeah, so
defensive
you
minded
get
all the way
it.
through.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
Toughness, all those little things you can, sell quickly.
yeah. And
Yep.
even when I first became coordinator, I mean, the big knock on our school was that we could score 40 or 50 points a game, but we couldn't stop anybody, and you lose shootouts, So
Right.
when I got there, that was kind of like my first thought was we need to be much tougher on defense and we'll win championships. And that's what ended up happening over time because there was a more of a focus on the defensive side of the ball. And now all of a sudden you became more of a balanced team, a tougher team, a mentally tougher team. And that's mental toughness is like the most important thing in sports. And if your team doesn't have mental toughness, it's tough to win close games or win games that you
Right.
need to win.
Exactly.
And obviously you've done an incredible job with that. I mean, I just kind of read off your record here and, again, winning 20 games pretty consistently. I think I averaged it out there. You only average about 3 losses a season in that 10-year stint. But I want to focus on that undefeated season a little bit. I had on earlier this year, Brian Fisher from Hanover High School girls team, and he had an undefeated regular season. And, the one thing that I realized with that was that it takes a mental toll on you. Obviously throughout the year, you're not even thinking of it. And then as you get closer and you get into the playoffs, it starts ringing through your head a little bit. Are we going to come out and play that bad game? Are we going to come out and make those mistakes that we haven't been making? So I guess 2 questions. One, when did you first maybe realize, hey, this is pretty realistic that we could go undefeated here? And 2, I mean, just talk about the mental capacity of that, what you had to do to really manage your team through those expectations.
Yeah, what's funny is I did not care at all about the streak at all. Like I didn't think of it, to be honest. I think a good loss is like a really good thing. And so my biggest nerves were that we didn't lose, like, to be honest. We got in, we played Christ the King from New York, and we played, I mean, top teams like around the country.
I
We were
saw
having
that. I
to
saw
come
that.
play. We were psyched. Archbishop Williams was ridiculous, that year. And Bishop Fian, like we had, I mean, I know I still have a ways to go looking on girls basketball, but I can't think of a better group of basketball players like than that year alone, just off of local talent. Like it was ridiculous. And so we got to play all these teams, and we made sure like our schedule was stacked. And I was shocked. Like, to be honest, I thought we needed a good loss, because it's right. That's when you get to go back to the practice, and tell your team, you get all BS at them and you can rip them apart, and they'll actually listen to you again. But the really special thing about this group was that we never needed to do that. And I think that was more than like the streak in like 25 games. And it was more like, wow, like this is really special. Like we don't even need to have that game for these kids to meet any competition that's being thrown at them. We like our next best game was like against the next best team. And so that was something that was really special. And you're not going to get that much as a whole team, and I think that's what made it so fun about it. I mean, we had girls on that team that we were trying, like I was selfishly trying to get them to 1,000 points because they deserved it so much. I mean, they're top basketball players in the state. Like they'll go down as the top. And they were so unselfish that they were making it so damn hard to get the 1,000 points. Like I'm drawing up plays so that they have to shoot the ball and then make some ridiculously great pass to the next player, And so they finally all got it, but by the skin of their teeth, So, I mean, if you have that combination, you're like the luckiest program in the world to have those kids all together.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, having a team like that that can just keep themselves motivated as a coach, it definitely makes it a little bit easier. Now, I heard you just allude to it. I was going to ask you. Some say that team was the best girls basketball team in the state of Massachusetts in the history. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And I know I'm biased that I'm their coach, but it has nothing to do with me. I just think you're not going to get 5 kids at a public high school that come along and are on the floor at the same time together playing like Division 1 basketball, and to be so incredibly unselfish. Like that was the thing. And they had every facet of the game. So we had some that could attack. We had some that were better from the outside. We had some that, so they really complemented each other so well. And they still took our whole program motto of defense being everything. So now you have these kids that are like ridiculously talented on offense, but committing that much more on defense. And so you were just like, like my coaches and I would watch practice, like literally like just watch practice. It's like not even coach at practice, I feel like half the time. And just be like, this is ridiculous. Like, God, we're watching a college level practice right now, and if they bobbled the ball, like I'd be pissed, like I'd be like, come on, like get on the line. We got to do that better. And you had to keep, upping your expectation for everything, because they were knocking everything out of the park. Like every standard you set, they were reaching. So that was a lot of fun. And you knew it while you were going through it, but you like wish you could have frozen time at
Yeah.
that point.
Now, during that 10-year period, one thing I always love to know of just kind of developing players is also kind of developing a staff. During that 10-year run, did you have the same consistent staff? Did you kind of switch in and out? And I guess, what do you really look for in your staff, or expectations that you do have in them as a head coach?
Yeah, I was really lucky. We had a coach who jumped up from freshman to JV right away. Kelly McDonnell was awesome, was with me for the 10 years. And then my brother, who played at Stonehill, played at Latin School, like I kind of followed in his footsteps. He was 4 years above me. He was my assistant coach. So, and he's awesome, gets the game. And his thing was all defense. So he was like our defensive coordinator. And so I had those two for my 10 years, and still have my brother came over with me and helps me out now. And I still like, and even the people that we added to that were all either former college players, ones that I played with or coached at Stonehill. And we had a bunch of our girls come back. So kids that graduated, which I thought was like the coolest part, they jumped on to our bench with us, so they like understood the relationship piece, like where the girls were at. We could kind of let them do all that stuff. And then we could just have more fun and not worry too much about the drama piece of it.
That's great. I mean, I think it's so important to always hear of how you develop your staff, or how the staff that you have. And some coaches like yourself are very lucky and have some top-notch assistants for a really long time to help them. Other coaches, they sometimes have those top-notch assistants and then they move on to head coaching jobs, and you got to redevelop your staff again. So,
I was really lucky. And I think too, just to add to the Norwood piece, was that because I'm like a woman, obviously coaching boys, I think it's really, really important to complement your staff with like great male role models. And so that switched going over to Norwood. Like now I want to be surrounded by guys who are going to get these kids and like really understand them, and they felt comfortable, so there was that automatic relationship. So I think it's just what complements you. Are you a yeller and you need someone that can chill you out? Are you too chill and you need someone that can get on people? Like you just have to know yourself a little bit better.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? And it's always knowing what you have to balance you off. I mean, that was kind of my big thing in choosing coaches. There were certain things that, that were kind of must, and certain things that, maybe not as much, but again, like I could teach them, or teach them the system or what they need to know going forward. So I always interested in that process and understanding that, so on and so forth. Education. Obviously, like as a football coach, I used to love going to clinics. It was like one of my favorite things to do, maybe besides going to a live scout, right? And the one thing that I recognize there is like you get some great stuff. I mean, you get a coach from like Florida, or you get like some Division 2 college coach who's showing you these awesome drills, and it's great. But there's not a lot of high school coaches that do that, right? So they're choosing from this talent pool that is deep and long, while you're like trying to kind of figure out your talent pool. So how do you feel, first, how much do you educate yourself in the off season? And two, like, do you see that in the world of basketball, that sometimes it's tough to find those like high school coaches that do those clinics?
Yeah, totally. I mean, first of all, ridiculously try to educate myself in the off season. Like that's all I do is read books, and I'm a huge podcast listener, you know, to what you're doing now. That's why I think it's so amazing, because I would be all over something like this, listening to other people try to, you know, tell their side and try to take different pieces from all these coaches on all levels. Yeah, I'm really lucky. We have this thing called Fireside Chat that we do just about every Wednesday night, and there's about 30 coaches around Massachusetts. Some are college, some are high school, and it's, you know, probably about 60 people rotating in, and it's great because it's all different topics, and it might be, you know, on culture, philosophy, and then it'll be on X's and O's stuff. So you're getting everything, and more than anything, it's just motivating you. Like you're like, oh, I'm going to take this. Like this is great. It fits my personnel. We're going to, you know, it just fires you up to keep going throughout the off season. And to your point, I absolutely agree with like the college coaching piece being a little bit too above sometimes what we're trying to do with our own players. And so that's what's nice about like the Fireside Chat, but also I'll go to a lot of clinics with just high school coaches. So we'll put them on in our area, and it's so productive. Like I get more out of those than going to any college coach and listening to what they're doing, to be honest, you know? Yeah. And the other thing we're trying to do is I'm on the board for the Mass Basketball Coaches Association. So like you're saying, we need more access to those coaches. We need to find out what people are doing. And I would like love to sit through practices, and which I did when we didn't make the tournament last year. I went around and just bounced around to really, really good teams practices. And it was awesome. Like I learned so much from sitting through 3 practices, more than I did probably all season, you know, and then to be able to do that and now create maybe a video library for our MBCA website is what kind of our next step is, of just high school coaches breaking down different things or talking about philosophy or culture, or, you know, and I think that's where we want to see what each other are doing. And we don't have team managers that can run drills a lot of times, you know, we don't have like all these just facilities that are so like great that these college coaches are talking about. We definitely don't have 6'4" guys with wingspans that are guards, you know? So it's like, how are we going to take my 5'5" kid that is quick, but, you know, doesn't extend at all, you know? So it's, I mean, you can pretty much climb under people. So that's where I think it'll be really effective for us.
Yeah, and that's awesome to hear that they're doing that in basketball. And hopefully that kind of is a chain reaction to all sports in Massachusetts, because I would love to sit down and see how somebody builds a program and what they did. And, you know, I always find that so intriguing when college coaches do it. And like I said, it's hard sometimes to implement some of the same things because that's their full-time job on top of it. It's not our full-time job. So it's a little harder too to kind of implement some of that stuff. A really fun story that I found about you and read about you in one of the local papers in Braintree was your excitement every 4th of July, because when you guys won the state championships, you were a part of the parades at Braintree, the 4th of July. I guess I have another 2-part question. I just have so many questions for you. So I'm trying to like put them together as like one, and it's a good education for me. You're part of those parades. How involved were you in the youth basketball program in Braintree? And how cool was it to see those girls cheering your girls on and someday maybe becoming those future basketball players that might have played for you?
Yeah, I think it's the number one reason that you're going to be successful or not is your youth program. You know, I just think I was so lucky in Braintree. They had such a great youth program. The coaches who were parents just got it. It wasn't all about winning, even though that came with it, but it was like development. So we got to know all those girls when they were in like 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. We ran a big camp in the summer that was more just about like having a good time, and maybe like 50% basketball, 50% like they could look up to the girls on our team and meet with them and talk and joke. And so what you want is to have a community of girls that like are dying to go to Braintree and dying to be a part of your program. And I felt like that's what we got. And every year when we would win it, we got to now be on, you know, this bigger stage in a parade where you have these little girls that have painted their faces blue and white and they're going crazy. And my kids could understand like how much these girls look up to them, you know, and how much what they're doing is a really cool thing. And I think that was like the best part to see, you know, of it all.
Well, yeah, I always find that community piece fun. I mean, I'm a teacher. I'm a fifth grade teacher, so I know how excited kids get for parades like that and how amped up they get. So to see the girls, it just must have been like a cool feeling for you, cool feeling for them. Like you said, a cool feeling for your players. And it's a motivating piece. I mean, you guys won in 14, what, 15, 17, and 18. So, a 5-year window there that you almost five-peated, So that must have been a really fun, 4 or 5 years for your program to just be a part of that every single year. And then I know you're not a big accolade person. I can tell just talking to you, but I just got to bring this up. I mean, the Boston Herald Coach of the Decade. I want to know when you heard that, like when you heard the first time you heard that, and like what your immediate reaction was when you heard that.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't hear from the person or the committee themselves, so I just heard it, I think, when everybody else did, like who I read it in the newspaper.
Wow.
So it was pretty, I think it was on Twitter or something like that. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Like there's definitely, as much as it's like all about, the team and stuff, I think it also can motivate you to keep going. Every like occasionally when you find out like, okay, maybe you did things that were all right and that worked a little bit, it definitely pushes you to keep going after it. So I think that was like probably the coolest part of it. I was like, oh shoot, like I must be all right at this. So why don't I just keep doing it and maybe I'll like try this and whatever. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought that was unbelievable. I mean, I know when we talked on the phone, I was like, I gotta find out at least a little bit more about this. And it's amazing. I think it's again another thing about you that's that stands out about what you do and the programs that you built. And yes, you might have had some talent along the way, but it always takes a captain to steer the ship in the right direction. And that's what you seem to do for a really long time in Braintree. So I know at the end of your 2018-2019 season, you're a guidance counselor at Norwood High School. The Norwood High School boys basketball coach job opens up. And obviously it crosses your mind to go for it. I guess the process I want to ask you is the process of seeing that job was open, and what went through your mind a little bit as far as like, hey, I want to give this a shot. I really want to go for this job.
Yeah, I went back and forth like a million different times on it. It was definitely not something that was on the radar in terms of like, if this opens up, I'm going to jump at it. And it just happened to open up, and I had been at Braintree for 10 years. I felt a little, and it's the thing I hate the most in life is complacency. Like I don't know, I just have like a pet peeve with it. And so I felt like things were starting to almost come too easy at Braintree, and meaning like I wasn't giving enough. Like because the youth program was set up, I felt like I had kind of laxed on maybe getting out there as much as I knew I had to before. And fundraising, I kind of like, so I needed something to rejuvenate me was really what it was about. And I always wanted to work and coach in the same school. It's just regardless like of gender. I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I hadn't had that experience. And the one negative about Braintree was that, I mean, the last game, like even if you won the state championship, it was like the weirdest thing and the feeling in the world, because you're like, this is awesome. And then you don't see them for a while.
Never.
You don't see them the next day, and that I like struggled with big time. And so I was like, oh, if I could do something where you can like build those relationships during the day, check in on them, see what's up, and then have the after school piece, I thought that was like a pretty cool thing to try. So that's like, that is the only reason that I jumped ship on that.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. I mean, obviously, yeah, you build a relationship with kids in school, and and then you're going to a different city or town to, and you're commuting, and there's a lot to that people don't talk about with coaching. The commute, jetting right after school, getting the practice at a certain time, not getting home till really late, and that's just repeat all the time. And
And that was a, like, to your point, that was a big part of it, because I was coming from another school, we never had the early practice. So like occasionally we would, but so we had that like, 5 to 7 or 5:30, 7:30, like that later slot. And so you just killed time until practice, and then after practice, another 45 minutes to get home. So you're talking like 5-6 hours of every day trying to figure out what you're going to do that day, because you can't just go home, so, and you're right. People don't really talk about those things, but it matters, you're trying to like make the most of the time you have. And that's where it was a little bit tougher.
Yeah, it's your sanity too. I mean, like you said, you're obviously not going home until you figure out your practice script, or if you're going home, that's what you're thinking about for the next day, and this is what we're going to do the day after. So it never ends. And I think sometimes people forget that when the last whistle blows in a game or in practice, that you're done and off until the next day. And it's really not. For anything, your job picks up even more after those practices and after those games. So again, it's not easy. So, I mean, you go for the job, and obviously, it's not very common to see a woman go for a boys head coaching job at a high school, but obviously you had the ammunition behind you as far as what you brought to the table, as far as the game of basketball goes. And some coaches, I've heard them say, whatever sport they're on here for, the game's the game. Whatever the game is, boy or girl, it's still basketball at the end of the day. But it must have got some attention, and it must have definitely been a little bit of a whole high profile move, a high profile coach from one sport to the other. I mean, talk about the process a little bit, maybe the interview process. I know you went and scouted the team a few times and took some notes there. So, how do you prepare yourself as a coach making a jump to try to become a head coach somewhere else?
Yeah, I think once you're going to try to go all in, I watched all their film from the previous year and just made a million notes on like each possession, literally like broke it down by possession for the entire year and what I thought we might benefit from going forward. And definitely not trying to like cure anything or make this like amazing change, or it's more just letting them know like you care enough to do that work and that you have a pretty good idea of what you're getting, the kids that you're getting and the personnel. And I think that was really important for the boys to know, was that I wasn't there to make a statement. I didn't care that I was a woman trying to, like join the boys team, whatever. And it was truly just to like coach basketball with a bunch of good guys that I knew anyway. So I knew the kids from school, and now I was going to be able to do it all day, see them all day and have those relationships. So I thought that was the most important thing. And they did, like, people they did make it a bigger deal in the high school ranks about it. There were like a lot of interviews at the time and stuff like that. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, like, I didn't really care about it. It was more, and I didn't want the kids especially to think I was doing it to like, lead some charge of like the feminist movement or something like that. Even though I think it's great if girls think they can do anything, it definitely was not what I was trying to do.
Yeah. And I think whether you were trying to do that or not, I think that that's a message that a lot of women look up to you and look to you and say, wow, what an incredible accomplishment. What an incredible thing. And you deserve that. You really do. So you get the job there. So starting a culture all over again. I mean, we talked earlier in the podcast about your time at Braintree. I mean, now being in the boys game a little bit, how do you approach maybe your style over the last 10 years? And did you have to adjust it at all when going to the other side of the game a little bit?
Oh yeah. I learned more in that one season than I have in every other year coaching, to be honest. Like, things I thought weren't right. I had to scrap offenses like, it was just, the whole year was a learning curve, and in a really good way. And that's what I think re-energized me, because I wanted to learn. Like, I really wanted to know what was going to be best and what we could do. And I think our staff was open to tweak things all season, which was good. We weren't set in one way. So if things didn't work, we were like, see you later. I definitely learned, like, I took too many kids my first year. I did the same thing at Braintree. Like, my heart grows way too big on tryout day, and I want everybody, but you can't, so like, I know I shouldn't have had 16 kids on the team, but I did, so little things like that you kind of deal with for the rest of the season. But again, I really lucked out. Like, I met with the captains right away, the seniors, they were into it. They kind of told me what they wanted to see, and I thought they had the talent. Like, they had the potential, and I think they showed it in taking like a really big jump that first year, and we just missed the tournament, but we got pretty close, and I thought that we got really close by one game. And I thought it was starting, that's kind of what you want to see that first year. And again, a lot of it was based on defense, like, what can you control, right? So that's what we're trying to get these kids to buy into.
Yeah, and I saw when you started the season, I'm just going to read the headline that I had looked up in the paper, but December 13, 2019, the headline of the Boston Globe, Kristen McDonnell, a winner in her debut coaching Norwood boys basketball team. I mean, that was the headline of the sports page. So that was pretty cool. But what I found was even a little bit more impressive was that your first opponent that you guys beat was Dover Sherburne, who won the Division III championship the year before that. So it wasn't like you started out with some cupcake. I mean, you started out with arguably the best team in Division III at that point playing. I mean, talk about that as like your first game. I mean, the nerves must have been there. On top of that, you're playing the defending champions. But then the other end, like when you won, I mean, what went through your mind? How'd you feel?
Yeah, it's so funny because I feel like I've definitely on the girls' side had been in like bigger games, like state championship, whatever. And I thought I was going to throw up before that whole game, like the boys' game. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I don't know why. I think it was because I had no idea how they were going to react to me, like on a sideline. We've had a couple scrimmages, but we never had really a big game. Like, was anything I was doing going to make sense once we actually played out on the court? So, and I think honestly, coaches probably go into that first game every year feeling a little bit of that, but this was exponentially worse. So we won by one at like last second, we were able to win it. And the team in the locker room, it was like, we had just won the biggest championship in the world, and what was funny is like, that was like the nicest feeling. And then on the other side, I'm like, well, we got to learn that like winning is a normal thing, like, I don't think we should be dancing and like jumping or for every win that we have, but it's pretty cool to get this first one.
Yeah, absolutely. You want them to be like they've been there before, right?
Yeah.
No matter how big of a game that might have been, right? Like at the end of the day, it's about building that culture, being like, hey, this is going to be normal. So, we need to react to it like it's an everyday thing. I totally get that. I really do. And I know you mentioned, and obviously that season you fell 9-11. That's the first time as you as a head coach didn't qualify for the playoffs. How did you react in that off season, I guess? I mean, it's a little bit of a different type of off season for you. And then obviously it doesn't help that it led into COVID, but I mean, what was that off season like for you, not making the playoff and saying, this is what I need to do and to improve as a coach?
Yeah, that was a tough one, because I think like, I don't know, I was lucky I had never not, made it. So it was, and I like love the playoffs. It's more just because you get more time with your kids and you get it more, it's just more like alone time with them. You kind of, the gym is yours a lot of times and you have the best practice times and it's just kind of your time. And so I hated not making it, I mean, they were a really good group of kids and for them to not hang out more. And so I struggled. Personally, I kind of felt like, you always come back to like, I let them down. We needed one more, we could have got it, so that hung over my head for a while. And so I immediately went to other practices of people that were still in the tournament and just I watched Mansfield coach, I watched Newton South and then Newton North coach, all like really, really good programs, awesome coaches. And I just needed to be like around the game. So I think I knew I had to get a lot better and see like, how much can you push boys physically and conditioning wise versus girls. And there's a huge difference, it's not good or bad. It's just, there's a difference. And so I don't think I pushed the boys hard enough, so watching those other practices, it was like, okay, oh yeah, I can go like way more on these kids, and so we started to like, the off season was good. Like, even though they didn't have AAU, these kids were playing pickup constantly. And people bash pickup and say like, oh, it's just, I love it. Like, as much as you can be around a ball and down the field, especially during a pandemic, right. Go for it. Like, get down there and do it. And we had a great preseason leading up to it when we could finally do some stuff. Kids showed up, like tons of kids showed up, which was great. So yeah, we got after it. And I think it like definitely, we had to marinate on it for a while. And it, probably like any coach, it really motivates you to get back at it.
Yeah. And then your off season, as far as your players go, I mean, are you the type of coach, like you mentioned, you want them just to kind of play ball, whether it's pickup ball or whatever, but you're a big advocate for them playing other sports as well. I mean, how do you tell your players to really manage their off season, I guess?
Yeah, I'm a huge like play everything. I love it. Like, most of our team, I mean, we pluck a bunch of kids from football. Those are our big kids, like they might not have the most talent as centers, but they're just pound people, they bang people around. And then we get, we have some soccer players. Then most of our kids go into lacrosse or baseball after, which I think is great. Yeah, we promote all of that. And we probably have, if we have a team of 12, we probably have about 3 or 4 that are doing AAU. But other than that, they're just playing. Like, they're always down the parks. And I think there's a genuine love for basketball. And that's what I love to see is like, yeah, go down, play, have fun with your friends. I don't care if you don't play a lick of defense in pickup, because nobody does, right?
Right.
Just go down, get some shots off, play, laugh, like, be kids, be normal. And then, when it comes time preseason, we'll get our act together and we'll make it more serious. And, we know where we have to be at that time.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing. I think as a multiple sport athlete, you also develop like different muscles in your body that you maybe wouldn't develop just playing
Mhm.
basketball, or you put yourself into leadership situations or mentally, tough situations where you got to do, something, you're in a tough spot and you got to overcome. And I think that that can also train your mind for the game of basketball as well, even though you're not actually playing the game of basketball.
And there's no
Uh,
burnout. There's no burnout.
right.
These kids, like when it's your season, they're all in, which is pretty cool too.
How much time do you take in the off season? Like basketball season's done. How much time is coach taking off before she's even thinking about it again?
Not much. Yeah, I'm kind of right back on it. I know. I help out with the girls AAU team, so that starts up pretty quickly after. Yeah, I'm obsessed with it. It used to be like a passion. Now I think it's like borderline like unhealthy. But I like crossed a line at some point. But yeah, I love it. I'll sit here and watch like YouTube videos of different X's and O's types things and just get different coaches' philosophies. I love seeing how people develop their players and their teams and stuff. So I love talking about it, obviously.
Well,
Like with you, I mean, this I could do this for hours, you know.
yeah. That's how I feel with these podcasts. Like sometimes I have to time check myself because I'm like, oh my God, like
Like
there's so much
nobody's gonna
more we could
listen.
talk
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
People have
Uh,
already shut off this thing. Yeah, right, right.
but what I found incredible is, obviously COVID year, and every coach I've had on here in any sport, we talk about, the difficulties of it. But what I noticed was you guys were 9-2. I think that's what I found. You guys were 9-2. So, you had 9 wins in total the first season, and your first 11 games this year, or your 11 games this year, you went 9-2. What was the difference between, I mean, obviously COVID, we could talk about that for hours, but what was the biggest difference, I guess, you saw in your team from year one to year two to have such a turnaround pretty quickly?
Yeah, I think the kids got more technical with themselves. Like I've felt like last year when you first jump into a program, it's much more big picture. Like what can we do quickly? You have 2 weeks of practice before your first game, and it's kind of crazy. And I felt like this year, not only could we be more technical as a staff, breaking them down on different aspects of the game, but they could be with each other. So there was like an automatic sense of, I mean, they definitely wanted to go undefeated. They definitely, if we ever had a tournament, wanted to like make a run. So before I said anything, like they were already there. So that was kind of nice. Like, so now everything we talked about was like, all right, well, what can get us there? What can we do? And they were great about it, So I think just that we lucked out a little bit with COVID. We had a couple disruptions, interruptions where we had to quarantine stuff, but for the most part, we got in all our games. Like we always wanted to win because you played back to back this year, which was interesting. So
Yeah.
in terms of like a scouting strategy standpoint, it was actually pretty cool. And you always wanted to win your second game no matter what, because it meant like, all right, you did something right in between that, whatever you
Right,
were
right.
doing. And so we lost one of those games, but won all the others, the second game. So I was like, okay, that's what we wanted to show, that we were like getting better. And I thought we peaked at the end of the game. I mean, the end of the season. So I'm just as psyched about next year,
Yeah.
and even talking to the boys every day, like they're psyched about next year. So, hopefully we just keep the momentum. Still got to get some, you still need the talent, but
Yeah, I
you
mean,
do what
that's
you can.
incredible. Like your year one to year two jump at Braintree is like so similar from your year one to the year two jump in Norwood. I mean, that's wild. And that, again, that's amazing. That's why I wanted to have you on here, because there's just so many questions like that that I could just ask you about you building a program. It's awesome. Um, so the last thing I want to jump into a little bit, and I ask all the coaches this, but I want to ask you differently as a woman. What's your advice to young females out there that are looking to get into the coaching game? They're looking to get back to where maybe they went to high school to coach, or they're looking to get their feet wet somewhere else and really, learn the ins and outs of being a high school coach. I mean, what advice would you give them and all the success that you've had?
Yeah, I think, and I almost, I wish I had done more of this at the time. And maybe it wasn't as available, but there's just so many resources out there right now, right? Like you could be on a podcast every night. You could be listening and kind of gaining insight. You could be talking to people. Like I remember getting ready for Braintree's job. I talked to every coach in the world about like, what was I doing? I think it's more just putting yourself out there and trying different things, try different levels. Like you don't know if you want varsity high school, you might want to be assistant college to start, you might want to be middle school. I think it's kind of just putting yourself out there, but when you do, go all in. Like even if it's a fifth grade team, go all into that fifth grade team, and that was where I know myself and some other coaches that I know they've done very well, we were coaching like a 7th grade AAU team, together, and we were like obsessed with it. Like we were like, this is, we're going to win every game. These kids are going to have an awesome experience. And so I think whatever you do, there's a million, especially for young females now, like they want them as coaches, right? Like they want them to be people they can look up to. And so the opportunities are there. You just got to take it. And then you're never ready to be a head coach. So just do it. Like that would be my other thing. Like I was not ready. And everybody I know still, a lot of people still question themselves that are great assistant coaches. And I'm like, oh, you just got to take the plunge. Like you're never ready. So just jump in, and they'll make you ready if you like it enough.
Yeah, that's great. No, it's cool. And I think that's what's just so important. I mean, I've seen you now at 2 different places really changing the way the game's played at those schools. And it's really cool and fun to watch. So that's great advice, Coach. And like I said, we're excited to have you on here. So we're going to jump into our last segment, which is called our 2-minute drill. So this is how it works. I'm just going to fire some rapid fire questions at you. Coaches say it's their funnest segment of the show. 1 or 2 word answers. If you want to explain something a little further, you definitely can. We're not strict here. We don't hold you by any certain rules. But again, it's just fun segment, and we like to hear your answers for it. So let me set the timer, and away we go. Song that still gets you pretty amped up before a game.
Life is a Highway.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Biggest victory in your career, and you've had a lot of big victories.
Yeah, I think the year that I had like left Braintree and then came back to Braintree when we won that state championship that year.
Okay. 1 word to describe your behavior on the sideline.
Ooh, like bumpy.
Well, I've had like 4 coaches in a row say passionate. So I was like, please don't say passionate.
Let's say passionate. All right. Yeah, I would say bumpy just because I almost feel like I would say too involved with the game.
I love
like
that.
literally narrating the game for
So how would your players describe you in 1 word?
Probably that, like overly. No, I actually think they would think I keep somewhat of a cool demeanor.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Most important position in your system?
Like,
Okay. Biggest adjustment to coaching the boys game?
I would say listening skills.
Yeah, girls are way better listeners.
Oh
right?
My God. Yes.
I'm a 5th grade teacher. I have like 10 and 10, and the girls listen, and the boys, it's like, what did you say? Like, I've said it 4 times, guys. I've said it 4 times.
I could tell them girls to do like 10 different things, and they would do it to the 10th thing. Boys, I'm like, try to get to the 3rd. Let's get to the 3rd thing.
I believe it. I see it every day. Who's your coaching idol?
Trish Brown. She was my coach at Stonehill College.
Okay.
Just
Very
awesome.
cool.
She's been there for like 18 years now. Amazing.
And last question, what's the most rocking opponent's gymnasium you've ever played in? Or coached in, I should say.
I was going to say, because played would be Methuen. And I would say coaching would be probably Bishop Thean.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Good rivalry.
Awesome. Yep. Well, you've survived the 2-minute drill, Coach. And I just want to say, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here. I think you're one of the best coaches around, and I mean that when I said that earlier. I mean, your accomplishments speak for themselves, but just listening to you come on here and in the way that you carry yourself and the expectations you have, but you're also pretty humble. I mean, you're maybe too humble, but you're a very humble person. And like I said, it's just an honor to have you on here to kick off such an important month to me. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I hope she wants to be involved in sports, and to have coaches like you out there and coaching these girls, especially those youth girls that look up to you. It's amazing stuff. And like I said, it was just a pleasure to have you on here today.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. I think what you're doing is awesome. I really do. And it's and once your daughter turns 3, I'll start working with her on her.
Hey,
get that ball in her left hand right away, and we'll take it from there.
You tell me, we'll work on it every day. So. Well, like I said, thank you for coming on. And from Beyond Podcast, I'm your host, Anthony Petralis. Again, we have an excited month coming up in May, and I couldn't think of a better guest that we had today, Kristen McDonnell from Norwood High School. So from Beyond Podcast, thank you so much. Till next time.